What's up, Vital MTB? My name is Luca Cometti, and for this video I'm going to be comparing two of Maxxis' most popular tires, the High Roller 3 and the Maxxis Assegai. Okay, so I actually used to ride for Maxxis tires back in 2015 and 2016 when I was on the Intense World Cup team. At that time, both of these tires were not available yet, so I have pretty much zero experience with either one of these tires. This is going to be the first time that I'm really riding the Assegai. I've ridden this tire a little bit on just some bikes I've borrowed in the past, and the High Roller 3 I have absolutely zero experience with. Okay, so actually from when Vital asked me to do this test for them, and when I'm starting to film this, I actually signed with Maxxis for 2025. So they're going to be supplying me with tires for the season. However, this video is obviously for you guys, but it's also selfishly just as much for me because I'm curious what tire I'm going to prefer now that I'll be running these tires all season long. Okay, so visually, these tires are quite different. The main difference being the fact that the Assegai has a transition knob between the center and the side knobs, while the High Roller 3 does not. The High Roller 3 also has more spacing between all the knobs, which theoretically would do better at shedding mud in case you happen to live in a place where it rains. I do not, at least not for the last 8 months. Hopefully that will change as I'm testing these tires. But given the forecast now, it's looking like dust, dust, and more dust for the foreseeable future. So while I've never ridden the High Roller 3, I have ridden the High Roller 2 quite extensively. It's been a few years since I've ridden that tire, but I do remember it being a little bit squirmy on some hard packed terrain. So I'm pretty curious to see with this new High Roller 3 that they've made, how it holds up to some more hard packed terrain. Okay, so for these two front tires, I've decided to go with a double down casing, as well as I have a DH casing DHR2 in the rear that I'm going to be using as my control tire for the rear tire. I'm going to be riding pretty much primarily this bike, which is a Canyon Spectral on Fly. This is a 42, 43 pound e-bike, and this is usually the tire setup I run. I like to have a DH casing in the rear and a more enduro casing in the front. All right, so let's get on the trail and see how these tires go. Oh. All right, so I've spent the last 3 months here testing the High Roller 3 versus the Assegai, and we've pretty much done all of our testing between San Diego County and Orange County. So for dirt, that's going to be a mixture of decomposed granite, which you get mostly East County, both in Orange County and in San Diego, as well as more coastal, you get sandstone and a bit more clay. When we started this test, we actually were more in dry conditions, but even as we're recording this, it's raining outside. So we finally did get some rain, so we were able to get these tires on sort of a mixture of terrain from dry to wet conditions. Okay, so how did these tires behave differently? So the High Roller 3 is a much newer offering from Maxxis. It actually came out in 2024. And I really enjoyed this tire, especially in the softer terrain. I did a lot of riding up in the Santa Ana Mountains where it's pretty loose, rocky. There's definitely some hard pack stuff out there as well, but there's a lot of trails out there that are quite raw and natural and very soft. Just the spacing of the knobs for the High Roller 3 really did a good job of digging into that soil over the Assegai. However, unlike a shorty, which would be kind of your cut spike for Maxxis, or the wet screen, which is the full spike, this to me is almost sort of like a mini spike. It is still faster rolling and more versatile than a proper spike. Compared to the old High Roller 2 that I actually spent quite a bit of time on, I found that these side knobs offered a lot more support. That was sort of one of my biggest complaints with the old High Roller, was the side knobs folded over really easily, especially when you got it into some hard pack stuff. While this tire actually does quite a bit better job in that hard pack stuff of the knobs not folding over quite so easily. They have quite a bit more surface area, quite a bit more sort of overall girth. So because we have so much clay here, when it packs down and bakes with the sun, it gets to be this kind of really hard packed material. And a lot of that hard pack material doesn't necessarily always come in the form of a perfectly groomed section. A lot of times it has these sort of weird imperfections in it. This is where I saw its biggest weakness. I found that transition from the center knob over to the side knob to be sort of a bit unsettling. The tire really either wants to be sort of braking or rolling straight or really hooked into a corner. Especially on hard pack stuff, it doesn't do the greatest job transitioning into corners. I feel like it'll tend to squirm a little bit in that situation, where the Assegai, I feel like, really excels having those intermediate knobs to help it. That being said, it did perform better in hard pack more than I thought it would, especially just visually looking at the tire. It does not look like a tire that would do great in hard pack. However, minus a few sketchy instances, I found myself kind of really enjoying this tire for all sorts of different conditions. For me, this is a tire I would probably pick for a lot of enduro and or downhill racing where the tracks are kind of breaking apart. If I was just going to be hitting the bike park and maybe hitting jump laps all day, this definitely would not be my tire of choice. I would probably go more for an Assegai or another tire in the line. However, for racing, I think this tire is going to be amazing. I think there's a reason that a lot of the guys on the Downhill World Cup were choosing this tire for their tracks they were on this year. And it seems like a tire that was sort of missing in the Maxxis tire lineup. So yeah, I would say if downhill racing and enduro racing is what you're going to be after, or you're just riding a lot of raw, loamy, sort of natural trails, this is going to be an excellent front tire choice for you. All right, so then we have the Maxxis Assegai. This tire, since it came out in 2018, has quickly become maybe the most popular front tire that I see, especially on local trails here. You also see a lot of companies speccing this tire from new, and I think that's for a reason. This tire really does well in a variety of terrain, where the High Roller 3, I feel like, is a little more targeted in sort of loose, soft terrain. This tire does well in all those other instances. Your more hard pack terrain, your loose over hard pack, your sort of intermediate terrain where maybe you have some rocks, you have some soft pack, some hard pack, sort of just the mixture of trail. This tire does really well. This tire with its transition knob does a lot better job of transitioning from your braking into your cornering. There's a little bit less of that squirm that I talked about with the High Roller 3. And this tire has quite stiff supported side knobs, so I'm never really worrying about this tire feeling overly flexy. You can see here, it goes from a sort of wider, longer knob to a sort of more almost squared off knob. I think that combination does a really good job of supporting, especially in the corners. And then you have this transition knob, which does a really good job of aiding from going to your braking into your cornering or your, let's say, kind of off-camber terrain, spots where you're not necessarily straight up and down or leaned into a corner. Yeah, so I think in general, if you're riding sort of more hard pack terrain, some loose over hard, lots of rocks, roots, kind of a mixture of everything, and you're looking for kind of your do-it-all tire, this is going to be your tire, the Maxxis Assegai. Kind of as I said in the beginning of this, now that I'm riding for Maxxis, it has been a cool opportunity to try these tires side by side to really see where they excel and where to pick one over the other. I hope you guys got something out of this video as well. And make sure to check out Vital MTB for more news and reviews, and we'll see you guys in some future videos. Thanks for watching.